The cover page of One Piece Chapter 1093 titled Luffy vs. Kizaru features Kobe and Helmeppo. Their glasses have been stolen by two Tarsiers, those notoriously big-eyed primates. Last we saw these two members of Sword, they were experiencing a terrible feeling of helplessness. Losing their mentor Garb to the Blackbeard Pirates was a painful ordeal, so it's nice to see them smile here. Picking up where we last left off, Luffy, in his massive Gear 5 form, was holding Kizaru and laughing. He brought the Admiral closer to his eyes and huge smile. Then Kizaru began to spin to the point where several after images of him appeared, which may or may not come back to haunt Luffy. But for now, the new Joy Boy whirled Kizaru around and around with his outstretched arm. Kizaru was pretty casual despite the absurdity and just asked Luffy to be gentle with him. But it was too late. Luffy launched him as far away as he could, proving just how light Kizaru really is. Puns aside, if you look closely, the hand that Luffy was using to hold Kizaru is thoroughly burned. That's because Kizaru's light is actually really hot, so the simple act of touching him is a painful ordeal. Luffy erupted with laughter after he sent Kizaru flying. The others decided to take this opportunity to run away. They figured that leaving Kizaru to Luffy was their best bet, but Chopper wondered where Vegapunk Atlas was going instead. Her plan was to visit the lower stratum. That was so she would be able to override the Pacifista's current orders. Otherwise, they'd be lit up by their lasers once they lower the barrier. This was seen as a valid strategy, since whoever controls the Pacifista will win the day. And thankfully, as Vegapunk Edison put it, there isn't anyone on Egghead Island with a higher authority status than the Vegapunks. Not like she jinxed it or anything. After taking a look at a nearby screen, Vegapunk Stella suddenly told Atlas that he would be coming along too. Usopp was immediately against this. The whole point of all of this was to keep him alive. Vegapunk knew this, but used the transponder snail in Usopp's hand to get a hold of Frankie. He asked the cyborg to confirm whether or not Bonney had been knocked down to the lower stratum. Frankie was relieved to hear that Bonney managed to survive. He began to say how Kizaru kicked her right into the barrier, but was interrupted. Stella was infuriated and wondered how a man like Frankie could let that happen to her. But come on, the attacker was an admiral. Frankie's ultimate weapon is a laser beam based on Kizaru himself, meaning it's totally useless against him. And even if it wasn't, the radical beam takes way too long to charge up. He doesn't even have Haki, so there's just no way that he'd be able to do anything. But it didn't stop Frankie from apologizing and wanting to go get her. At the same time, Lilith and the General Frankie are in the background. Over on the second floor of Building A, Sanji joined in on the call to say that he planned on joining them to save Bonney. Meanwhile, Jinbei confirmed that he had brought everything Vegapunk told him to bring aboard, so now he was going to exit and propose that they all meet back up there. Now this is really interesting because we have no idea what Vegapunk asked Jinbei to gather up for him. Anything he's decided to bring along is bound to be of the utmost importance or vitality. Egghead Island possesses technology that is several hundreds of years ahead of the rest of the world. The whole place is pretty much a treasure trove. Caesar and Judge might not outright admit it, but they would love to get their hands on all this. Vegapunk's work is also very expensive to develop and maintain. So out of all that stuff, what's worth the effort and cost of such precious time? What I'd imagine most fans would be really excited by would be a ton of devil fruits. Dr. Vegapunk is able to at least make clones of Zoan types, so he might actually have a surprising amount of them. That being said, the process of Zoan devil fruit cloning seems a bit trivial to Vegapunk at this point. Unlike Caesar's unreliability, for Vegapunk it's just a matter of money and resources. That's something he could easily replicate later on if he has the right tools for the job. Paramecia fruits are a bit more complicated, but he managed to find a compromise thanks to the invention of green blood. But that's not too promising for pre-existing characters, and he couldn't replicate Logia powers no matter what he tried. So unfortunately, I'm not expecting anything devil fruit related. However, he might just be giving the Straw Hats the equivalent of an ancient weapon here. The Vegapunks, in their pursuit of sustainable energy to infinitely power all their inventions, created their most dangerous one yet, the Mother Flame. This thing is way worse than even the Seraphim. Just a sample of the thing provided by Vegapunk York was enough to completely wipe out an entire island off the map, the environmental ramifications of which have been felt all over the world. The upper stratum is the most highly protected area of the whole island. It would be the best place to house the components of something so dangerous. Vegapunk didn't even know that the world government knew about the Mother Flame until a moment ago. This was thanks to hearing York promise to create more of it for the Five Elders. So it would make sense for him to secure its components and ensure that the Marines can't get their hands on it. Down below on the Fabio stratum, someone suddenly cried out in dismay. A Marine officer shouted that they needed to avoid the city center. They had reason to believe that Jewelry Bonney was close by. There was a marine collective of children and old geezers. All personnel were told to remain on guard as the pirate could be hiding anywhere. If they were careless, she would change their ages. These guys are lucky that Bonney isn't more proficient with her abilities because her Devil Fruit at max power is absolutely terrifying. It would pretty much be an unborn attack. Bonney was bruised, but kept her back close to some debris as the Marine spoke about taking her down. Sentomaru remained flat on the ground after being terribly burned all over as Bonney looked at him. She gritted her teeth while remembering what happened only moments ago. Bonney screamed as she broke through the laser defense system. This girl definitely has Kuma's genetics because there is no way she should be this okay. Bonney took a kick to the back of the head at the speed of light. This then sent her right into a laser system that was devised to be as deadly as possible by the greatest inventor in the world. Kizaru kicking her into it despite talking about not hurting her gives me the feeling that he knows more about her durability than we do. But thankfully, Bonney was caught before she landed. It was Sentomaru. He told Bonney to run before the Marines could get a hold of her. And listen, Sentomaru has been beaten more than once during this arc so far, but he's still a total Chad. Much respect to this man. Now, Bonney wondered what she should do. She wasn't sure if she'd be able to hide until things died down. Back up in the Labostratum, Luffy was still laughing. This time it was because Zoro and Rob Lucci were in an intense fight against one another. Luffy asked Zoro if he could use a hand. As Zoro's swords collided with Lucci's claws, he told his captain to just focus on Kizaru. The CP0 agent was in his Awakened Zoan form and keeping the pressure up against Zoro. Zoro extended Enma as it rippled with hockey. He decided that if this was the best that Rob Lucci had, it wasn't a fight worth his captain's time. Lucci didn't seem to mind the insult. He figured that killing a Yonko's second in command wasn't a bad consolation prize. I'm not really sure what I'm hoping to see from this fight between them, since I'm pretty sure Lucci was going all out against Luffy earlier. If nothing else, this should probably be pretty satisfying for power scalers. It can let us know how close Zoro is to Luffy in terms of strength. I've been seeing a lot of talk about Zoro training as hard as he does, only for Sanji to be close to him thanks to a cybernetic knee BL and a bit of drag queen cardio. So I want you guys to tell me how big you think the gap is between Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji right now. And do you think it makes sense? As all this went down, Kizaru was still flying through the sky after being thrown by Luffy. Looking at his surroundings, Kizaru recognized that he was on the verge of falling into the ocean, which would be game over since he's a Devil Fruit user, Admiral or not. So at the last possible second, he shifted his body before contact could be made. He then unloaded a spectacular array of flashing lights. Kizaru then became the light itself and moved right back to Egghead Island. Luffy put a hand up over his eyes, but before he even realized, several orbs of light had appeared in front of him. Luffy had been goofing off until now, but it could be that he decided to look because he sensed something change thanks to his observation haki. But of course, when Kizaru becomes his element, it's already too late. And just as quickly, those orbs of light became several clones. And from there, Kizaru finally revealed his Sword of Light. One of them swung at Luffy with incredible speed, but not quite the speed of light, so Luffy was able to evade. But not entirely. Kizaru was able to burn his face a bit. But with a booming Dawn Whip, Luffy was able to dismiss two of them. But more just kept chasing after them. He called them Hollow Ghosts, which was a combination of the holograms he saw on Egghead Island and Perona's Devil Fruit ability. The multi-manned army of Kizaru formed an upward spiral as they chased the Cloud Runner. But this was all according to Luffy's plan. He then deleted 8 clones of the Admiral at once. These things aren't any less intelligent or capable as a real deal, so this is really impressive. And the way Oda is handling all this is brilliant. He's allowing Luffy to look dominant and powerful, while also preserving the respect and imposing presence of an admiral. Luffy is definitely stronger than Kizaru. If this was just a one-on-one fight, there wouldn't be much of a question. But it's not, and it hardly ever is. The name of the chapter being Luffy vs Kizaru might make it sound like this will be the height of their clash. But the chapter named Kaido vs Luffy was when they first met and the Beast one-tapped him. So there's definitely more in store for us. Luffy even wondered if he might have gotten the real one too. But just then, Luffy heard a scream from below and realized that Kizaru had returned to where he had grabbed him before. Luffy was totally fooled. Kizaru immediately went after the other god of the crew. Brook and Nami were ready to put in some work too. Kizaru was surprised to see that Vegapunk wasn't there. That's when Luffy noticed something. Vegapunk went crashing through glass as Sanji begged to be let inside the vehicle. This was the Vega Tank 8. And according to Sanji, Stella was really angry right now. Angrier than he's been this entire arc. He swore on everything that the Marines had better not laid a single finger on Bonney. Putting pedal to the metal, Stella said outright that Bonney just needs to hold on because he's on his way. Vegapunk thinks he's Denzel Washington in Man on Fire or Liam Neeson in Taken. He refused to stand idly by while a little girl gets murdered. And alright, that's enough for me. Bonney is actually a child. This has been a pretty well-known theory, especially lately, and it seems like it might actually be the case. Not long before this, Jay Garcia Saturn called her a little girl when it was reported that she was on the island too. He also said that they can leave her be, although it doesn't look like that's happening so much. The Bonney Pirates may have only been created for the sake of pursuing her father Kuma. Since she's technically a princess, they could have been her servants or aged-up friends. Her powers are still a big mystery. Forced transformations don't last too long, but what if there's no resistance? Akainu said that a cold shiver went down his spine when he heard that she escaped the government, meaning she was particularly important. Her old bounty was 140 million berries, and was at some point risen to 320 million. But we've never seen her wanted poster. It's possible that the bounty on her head was one that specifically requested capture instead of death. However, Saint Saturn did say that they no longer have any use for her, so whatever she was good for, it seems like that's over now. No disrespect to my girl Nico Robin, but what might have been Bonnie's first bounty was higher than Robin's post-Dressrosa bounty. Robin received her first bounty of 79 million berries at the age of 8. If Bonney is the same age or lower, that would imply that they needed to secure her more than they needed to deal with the one person who can read the poneglyphs. Luffy did not think that Stella going down there was a good idea at all. Kizaru raised a finger and was fully prepared to death beam Vegapunk. But just as he fired his lightspeed projectile, Luffy somehow managed to eat it like Pac-Man. And suddenly, Luffy began to glow as light escaped his body. Definitely not the sort of thing you want to eat on account of the insane heat. Frankie hitched a ride with Vegapunk and told Lilith to use the General Frankie to get the Sunny out of harm's way. The Marines received an urgent update. Dr. Vegapunk was trying to leave the Labostratum and was headed down to them. Edison was on standby and was totally prepared to deactivate the Frontier Dome quickly before putting it back up. The Vega Tank 8 was rolling on an artificial cloud. Atlas cried out to all Pacifista units with a Vegapunk-issued override command. She began to cry out their new mission as they awaited orders. Atlas commanded them to destroy every single Marine on the island. But we see Saint Jay Garcia Saturn right there. As one of the 5 elders, he belongs to the only group of command issuers above even the Vegapunks. This is an insane development. Remember, this whole command order thing doesn't work over communications devices. Otherwise, the Vegapunks would have just issued orders over a loudspeaker. To command these things, you have to do so in person. And that's exactly what Saint Jay Garcia Saturn will need to do. Frankly, he doesn't have much of a choice. If the Pacifista turn on them, Seraphim included, these Marines will be completely wiped out. No question about it. Saint Saturn specifically requested that his presence here remain a secret, which is why the Vegapunks don't anticipate that they will be outranked here. I mean, when the feds come knocking, you don't expect the president to pull up for some smoke too. The moment Saint Saturn steps foot on Egghead Island, this becomes one of the most insane events in One Piece history. Because from there, the only way they escape this place is by knocking this guy out. And besides the Marines and Pacifista, based on the nightmarish scene we saw during the Reverie, that will not be an easy task. I'm getting way ahead of myself here, but imagine if Bonney were to touch him with her power and nothing changes. As in, he doesn't age up or down at all. Based on a somewhat recent cover page, it doesn't look like he's aged a day in decades at least. We're on break next week, and the wait already feels like it's lasting decades. From activating ancient iron giants to one of the 5 announcing his arrival. One Piece is absolutely insane right now. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.